Back in high school, I worked at a game store in the mall during the summer while going to college. It was the best place ever because it sold all kinds of board games, tabletop games, dice, miniatures, RPG books of all kinds. And as the cute girl that worked there, I could read all those books when none was around. Enter Rat Boy. Now, I'm not trying to say this to be rude, but sadly, Rat Boy did unfortunately look as if he was the unholy spawn of a human and a Skaven from Warhammer. Long, narrow face, beady eyes, flared nose, and large bucked front teeth. Rat Boy worked at the camping supply store across the mall and happened to wander into my gamer store about a week or two after I started working there. The moment he spotted me, to him, it was love at first sight, while I was just looking to make a sale because we had a slow day. Small talk between us ensued, and things were pleasant. He bought a few miniatures, and he stuck around until his break was over and left. Rat Boy started to come around more often to chat with me, and I was always polite and friendly, as was required by my job, and he in turn wasn't giving me any indication that he was a creep. Yet. Finally, about a month went by. I lamented to Rat Boy that my local D&D group that I had been playing with for about 4 years was on hiatus because a couple of our members had gone off to the army boot camp. Rat Boy's beady little eyes lit up. He said, "I've been wanting to run a campaign for some time. I already have a few players in line, but my break's about to be over, and work is obviously not the place to discuss this. So, do you want to meet for dinner or something and talk about role-playing?" Being excited about getting my role-playing fix, I stupidly said yes, not thinking anything of it, and gave him my phone number. Those Skavens are a tricky lot. We ended up meeting at the local botanical garden, which had a nice restaurant inside of it. This sort of impressed me through a role-playing lens, as Rat Boy had mentioned that he LARPed in addition to DMing, and you could rent space in the garden, so I began to wonder if maybe he brought me here to discuss the idea of perhaps doing a session or two at the garden for ambience. I was so naive. We sat down to dinner, and I noticed Rat Boy was rather nicely dressed. I had showed up in the Wizards of the Coast shirt and a pair of jeans. He complimented me, and I kinda brushed it off, telling me he looked fancy. I didn't know what else to say. Honestly, I'd never seen a rat man in a suit and tie before. We ordered food and started talking. Then Rat Boy offered to buy me an alcoholic drink. Red flag. Rat Boy was 25 years old, and I was still only 20 years. He knew I wasn't legally allowed to drink, yet here he was trying to offer me a drink. I politely declined, but he insisted, saying that it would be on his tab and no one would know, that I should relax and just enjoy myself. What Rat Boy didn't know about me is that my dad is a functioning alcoholic and a fairly strict man, with a strong moral compass despite his drinking. And while I may be dumb, I'm not stupid. I had driven myself here, and there was no way I was drinking something and then try to drive myself back home, or leave my car here and risk getting it towed just to call someone to get me. So I looked at Rat Boy and smiled. "Tell you what, you go ahead and buy a glass of wine, or a mixed drink, or any other kind of alcoholic beverage that you think I would like, and then you can sit there and watch as it sits on the table and I never take a single sip from it. Please, don't waste your money. I'm fine with my tea. Thanks." Rat Boy ordered me a blue hurricane anyway. Red flag number 2. Needless to say, that drink sat there on the table and I never once touched it, even when Rat Boy scooted it across the table at me and asked me, "Just take a sip." As we ate dinner, we discussed his ideas for a possible campaign. He was thinking about running something Ravenloft. I had heard about Ravenloft, but wasn't really interested in it. My current DM told me about how it worked, and it turned your characters evil and horrible because of corruption. It was full of all sorts of horrible things, yet that seemed to really appeal to Ratboy. When I tried to ask him about the other players, Ratboy was very vague, and he seemed more interested in talking about me. He also said some really strange things like, "I would love to walk with you around the gardens, and can you please pose so I can draw you?" Because apparently he drew stuff. Ratboy thought I would look stunning drawn up as a pin-up vampiress or demon's thrall in chains. I asked the waitress for 2 checks because this wasn't a date, and I'm all about paying for my own things. Yet Ratboy still took the entire bill and paid for it. I tried to protest and insist that I pay for my meal, but he refused, saying, "It's a gentleman's duty to treat a lady." I frowned at him, but he just laughed at me, so there wasn't much I could do. Dinner ended and he walked me to my car, as it was getting late, and then he asked me if he should follow me home to my place. I was kinda confused. I said no, cause I had an early shift at the store the next day. I thanked him for dinner, and I would see him then. He kinda mumbled an okay, and awkwardly shuffled away. The next day is when things turned ugly. So I'm working at the store. My boss's bud is there, and there's a few other friends that work in the other shops. My boss was a tall, lanky guy with glasses and curly hair that always looks unkempt. He also looked like he might be an alien wearing a person's suit, he was so skinny. But he was really nice and soft-spoken. We were all having a good time, and I'm standing behind the counter, and in strolls Ratboy, chest all puffed out and proud. He walks right up to me, grabs a hold of my wrist, and goes to pull me in for a kiss. Roll for saving throw. Natural 20. I did the only logical thing I could think of, being my father's daughter. I tucked my head down and headbutted him right below the sternum, knocking the wind out of him. Ratboy grunted, let go of me, and doubled over on the floor wheezing, while I retreated to the back corner, well out of his range. Everyone else is looking around confused like, what in the world just happened? Meanwhile, I'm reaching for the master sword we have mounted on the wall, just in case Ratboy decides to go feral. Ratboy gets up, red light in his beady little eyes as he stares at me. "Why did you attack me?" he heaved. I stared at him angrily. "What in the world do you think you're doing trying to kiss me, you creep? You don't just walk up to a woman and grab her like that. What's wrong with you?" "We're dating," he shouted back. "I took you to dinner." No. I balked at him in horror. I had never agreed to do that. I thought we were just going to play a game. Ratboy's face became something nightmarish, but just as I started to worry a shouting match or something uglier would ensue, my scrawny boss grabbed him by the collar and started to smoothly walk him back out of the store, dragging him along like a lich drags away prey. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave my store, young man," he said in his soft voice, but there was something terribly eerie about his tone as he tossed Ratboy out into the mall's hallway. "Please do not come back and harass my employees, or I will have to discuss the matter with your own employer." My boss stood there between me and Ratboy like the spotter himself, and it was one of the coolest things I ever witnessed in my life. Ratboy glared past him at me and then took another look at my boss, then turned tail and left. Boss then came back into the store and asked me if I was alright. I told him I was fine, and he was officially the coolest boss in the world. He blushed. As further thanks, because I'm a southern girl and I like to cook, I made lumpia for the store and brought it into work the next day. I think there's a black hole in that scrawny body that is my boss's stomach. He ate nearly 20 of them and then told me I should bring him more next week. But little did I know, this wouldn't be the last I would see of Rat Boy. So yeah, not a traditional RPG horror story in a sense, but a horror story nonetheless. I feel that this is all too common of an occurrence, where a guy mistakes a girl's customer service as flirting or something or whatever, but this is going a little bit too far. Buying drinks for an underage girl is a horrible tactic, as well as assuming having dinner with someone is automatically a date. I would normally hope that this would teach him a lesson, but Rat Boy will return. So what do you guys think about this story?